So I want you to know the topic today is about selling real estate. So Rick and I are going to be the presenters of it, but please know we're not trying to sell you. We're trying to keep it to the facts. You're welcome to have any realtor you want because there's a lot of good ones out there. But there are things that you probably don't have a clue about that is in selling a house as is. So I'm going to have Rick join me, and these are kind of the outline of how we're going to have today unfold. We're going to talk about what it is selling a house as is in California. California is a lot stricter than a lot of states, as you might know. We're pretty litigious, and so there's a lot of ways to protect yourselves. And then we're going to talk about the different ways to sell and who those buyers might be. And we have some examples to share along the way. And again, please, these are examples of homes that we have sold, not to sell you, but to use an example so that you understand it. We've sold over 400 homes in this area since we're counting in the MLS. I've been in the business since 1986. And Rick joined me in 2005. So, and then we're going to talk about ways to protect yourself and some of the disclosures. So, ways for you to sell a home. So there are, as is, what is the main thing we're talking about today. Because a lot of people they don't want to have a lot of people coming through their house, they want to sell it as is. But what's involved in it as is? It's not buyer beware. There's a lot of things that are involved in it. And so some people think, oh yeah, I'll sell it as is, but if there's like some safety issues, I'll do that. Or they'll say, I know that cosmetically it needs this, and we're willing to do that. So as is kind of a big umbrella. And then there are things where you can actually maximize your home by doing some improvements. And if you're willing to do that, how much more are you going to get? So I am going to invite Rick to join me, and we're going to do this together. And please know, if you have questions, jot them down and make a note, because what we'll do is we're going to be up here till 11, and then at 11 o'clock we're going to have questions and answers. And that way, if something triggers, rather than interrupting us, let us finish this seminar, and then we'll do the Q&As. So Rick, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Hey, good morning, Encinitas. Thank you all for coming. My goal here today is to make you an expert, better than most of the real estate agents, on what that selling as is means. I put together this little chart here. Please read it. It's basically what real estate brokers and attorneys try to teach real estate agents. The most important one of that whole thing is that final line. A lot of folks, when they think they're going to sell their house, they're thinking like a salesperson. There's nothing wrong with my house. It's all perfect. I'm not going to mention the roof problem. Everything's perfect. Everything's fine. It doesn't work out that way. People will buy. I've sold houses, and Chrissy sold houses to people that have bought homes that need a lot of work. I had a client once bought a house. I begged them not to buy it because it needed too much work. They bought it. They were very happy with it. It's not an idea of hiding from the market what's wrong with your home. A lot of attorneys are making a lot of money off of that. One of the brokers that I work with told me, and I don't know this for a fact, but I did look up some of it. Right now, 60% of the lawsuits in California are based on real estate. He said that over 90% of those are based on this. People not telling people what they're buying. We all walked around, we grew up with the idea, right? Caveat emptor, buyer beware, right? It's their problem, not mine. They're buying the house. It's not that way. There are a lot of attorneys here in California, and a lot of them are doing this. And I've talked to a lot of them, and they tell me this stuff is true. People are trying to hide that stuff all the time. if you ever decide to sell your house, don't hide information. Because the people that are buying your house are not going to be buying your house based on anything that's logical at all. They're going to be buying their house on the way they feel about it. So if they find out that the roof needs replaced, they're not going to like it. They're going to try to get you to replace it. But remember, this is an emotional situation for them, if that makes sense. They'll say, well, hell, we can, that roof's only 25 grand. We'll put that in. We'll buy this place for that price, all right? A lot of people, and I give this to the real estate agents that are buying my listings, saying, my seller isn't gonna do any repairs. Do you understand? Oh yeah, I get that. I understand, right? We get into escrow, and within a week, I get a request for repairs to repair the things that they're instructed. It's on the house, right? So at this point, one of two things can happen. The seller can go ahead and say, I guess I'll have to come up with I'll give them $25,000 off the sales price, so pay for the roof, and that'll be fine, right? The people, when they bought that house, knew that that roof was an issue anyhow. They had already figured that out. Now they wanted to get a little bit more money. Here's the other problem. The real estate agents, and I just did it 2 months ago, 3 months ago, I had that contract, 3 different contracts signed 3 different ways because the people who were selling the house, he had dementia, she was very ill, they were getting out, right? They couldn't do all that. So they do a property inspection report, hand it to me with a request for $4,000. It's nowhere noted in that report, but that's what the agent thought should happen. I told the agent, we're canceling escrow. It got to that broker real quick and said, what's going on, canceling escrow? I said, we're not doing this work. I told her originally, we're still not doing it. That broker said, I'll have you work with one of my other agents, keep this thing going. So 2 things here. The one thing that is going to be on a lot of these slides all the time, please disclose stuff. If you disclose stuff, it will not keep your house from selling. That's your insurance, if you're okay with that. Can you charge the next one? I don't want to prove that all homes, this is the residential purchase agreement for a home in California. This is page 1. It says, right here, section B, the property shall be delivered as is in its present condition. This comes from the buyer. The buyer said they know they're buying it in its present condition, right? So everything should work out just fine, right? I have just as many of these where the people come back and say, well, the way the buyer is, he wants some of the money. I grew up as an engineer. I never gave up money on any deal that I put together because I knew what it cost. When I got into this business, all of a sudden it was weird because the agents are telling me, oh yeah, this is part of the business. It's done this way. It's not that way in the contract. Still, I get the same thing. When you sell, you will see that and you will believe that that is the way it's going to work out, and you will be wrong. Because, and it took me a while to learn this, a lot of times this isn't done on, since this is not done on logic, it's done on emotion. They're not going to read this. They're going to look at this and say, no, it doesn't apply here. That's a signed contract. This is California. You know how many attorneys we have? It applies here.
And despite that, attorneys still bring suits.
Oh yeah, well, here's the other part. I'm glad you brought that up. They do bring suits. And what I couldn't figure out when I was told that there were that many lawsuits, right? There's not enough judges in the state to handle all this. We just found out that 98% of those are settled out of court. So you can't go through and get rid of it, but the idea is when you go into this, know what you're up against, because you don't know that buyer, and I don't know that buyer, and we don't know that agent either. We don't know what agreements have happened, and we don't know what they're expecting. So I'll just say this one more time. All homes in California are sold as is. Doesn't matter what somebody else thinks. There are people out there that think that the planet's flat, and they think they're right. So you've got to be aware that if you sell your home and if you get into escrow, you will, and you're thinking, man, we're going to get $2 million for this house. This is going to be great. And you're going to get a sheet of paper outside of this contract that says, hey, we want you to reduce the price by $100,000 because there's things wrong with this place that we didn't know. That's why you want to make sure they know it all. When we put this stuff together, most agents will not put, you're your agent's boss. So when you're working with this agent, you tell this agent, I want to put together all my disclosures on this thing. I want all the contracts where I have to say what's wrong with this house. Agent will go, don't worry about that. We have 2 more weeks before you have to do that. No. You want to get that stuff out right away, because if the buyer realizes that they're not going to get the house for the low price they were expecting, they're going to drag their feet on everything, which means while they're dragging your feet, you can't sell your home until they cancel the contract. That's, again, California law. You as the seller are only control of this thing until you get a buyer. At that point, the buyer's in control, pretty much the whole thing. So set it up ahead of time to work for you, not to work for the buyer. I think that's all. The next one's yours?
Nope, yours.
Oh, okay, all right, let's have some fun. I used to be a chemical engineer, so I'm not a lot of fun, but I'm gonna try to be fun. I'm trying to get over that. So here comes some fun stuff. I have fun with these guys. There's things that we see on the ads on TV and the guy that, I want to buy your house, right? All that. You know that there's stuff missing. You just know it. But what is it, right? What are they trying? Well, a lot of those folks, they are marketing firms. They don't sell houses. They call me. Hey, we got this deal. Are you interested, right? No. Leave me alone. We get texts all the time. Do you have anything for us to buy, right? We'll fix it up. The one thing that I found out that's kind of, I don't know if these guys are still doing this, but they'll turn out 100 offers a day, each agent. They'll look at the MLS, they'll see the homes that came on the market, they can use public records to figure out who owns a home, and they'll start writing offers, and they just mail them out and hope, and sometimes some of them come back, right? By the way, now we all know that they're not paying market rates for those houses, right? I mean, they're not going to do that. They're going to pay less, right? Anybody got an idea of how much less than the market they pay?
20%.
Yeah, almost. It's over. It's never below 25%. It's always over 25%. I haven't seen 100, Bill, but I'm going to look forward for one. So basically, when you use these guys, so you don't have to use a real estate agent, you don't have to fix anything, all that stuff, the way they put the contract together is true. You're going to get about 70% of the home's true market value. They need the other money so they can put the home together to get the next price. We have some of that coming up later.
Let me just point out on iBuyers, I don't know if you guys have seen that online. iBuyers stands for instant buyer. So there's a lot of companies out there that you go online and you say, I just want to sell it as is. And what they do is they run it through this program and they come up with a price and they offer you this price. One of the things that's hard here in San Diego is to come up with a price, because if you're closer to the ocean, values are up, right? If you're close to the freeway, values are down. And sometimes there's abuse, sometimes there's not. Not all the parameters are included when they're coming up with this value. And so they're going to make you an offer without seeing it and expect you to accept it. And then they will come out and look at it. And I've never had a personal dealings with the iBuyers, but I have a friend who is a real estate agent who did it. And so they brought, they wanted to sell it as is, they didn't want people coming through. So they gave them a low offer, and her seller said, yeah, I'll go with that. But then when it came time to what actually come out, they dropped it by like 50,000. Oh, we didn't know it needed this, this, and this. So you've taken up that time. So sometimes I'm sure it works out really well, but just beware of the value of your home, because there are other ways to sell it even as is, where your price is not going to be knocked down that much. But if you're happy with that much money, you have a lot of equity, it's a very easy way to do it. Well, let me switch the slide for you. Oops, wrong way, sorry.
Here's my buddy. Want to buy your house. So anyhow, I mean, it's the same stuff. It's the same stuff we see on TV. Not much difference.
These are more the investors. They're texting us agents all the time, saying, it's like if you have a flipper, we'll buy house cash. So
When we put a property on the market, the day that it hits the MLS, we usually get one or two of those things from these guys.
low offers.
Yeah, they're low offers.
But they're
we'll
all
buy
cash.
all cash, right?
Quick close, they'll let you rent back, all kinds of special.
Yeah, I like that all cash thing. Everybody makes a big deal of it. Hey, but I got all cash, right? And I'd say, okay, you got all cash, that's great, but help me with something. What's the difference between the cash that you have and the cash that these people are going to get a loan on? Is there anything different there? Well, we got cash, right? And I keep getting this, like, we got cash. I go, it doesn't matter, we don't care. What we want is that number. Bring me a sales, I don't care how you pay for it, right? So anyhow, am I done yet? Okay, yes, okay, so here's, I was trying to, we did not do those, but I wanted to figure out how to use the MLS, use the information that's available, and figure out how much money they spent on repairs. I didn't put that up there, but you can see.
So these are homes that have been sold as is, and an investor flipper bought them.
Yeah. And they're, the numbers that you're going to see today may be a little lower than usual. I just took one of our reports from 2021 out of our website. So they'll be a little bit different than this, but if you're from Encinitas, you know where these are. And you can see what happened there.
Can you guys read those numbers, or do you need room to? Yeah, okay.
So what you're seeing there is, say, just the one on Willow Spring Drive, right? There's about $500,000 difference there. Well, part of it went to selling costs. They had to pay an agent eventually because the person that bought it had a real estate agent. The seller pays that real estate agent, right? So they had to pay a real estate agent somehow, right? Because if you buy something for $1 million and you fix it up, you're going to expose it to the whole market, right? That market has real estate agents that are supporting those buyers. It's that real estate agent that will put together that same thing that I just showed you as far as the purchase agreement goes, buying as is. So there's no such thing as not having, you as the home seller don't pay the real estate agent, but that investor has to pay that real estate agent to sell the home.
So, Rick, real quick, so if I don't have an agent myself, seller, I still have to pay the buyer's real estate agent if they have an agent?
It depends on, these go together a lot of different ways. But if you were to, the way I would set it up, if you were like talking to me off the side, I'd say, listen, let's look at this commission thing. Let's look at what they're giving you, because their contracts are a lot different, right? Because they'll give you the residential purchase contract, but they're giving you another contract behind that. Oh yeah, was it the iBuyers? We dug through some of this stuff. These guys are getting 13% commissions on some of this stuff, right? They hide it in different spots. They're investors. All they're trying to do is figure out how to make as much money on the deal as they can, right? So you're not going to have to pay, if you're working with one of these guys, it's correct. They're going to give you a purchase price, right? Now, what they do with that number is really up to them, it's not up to you. But the extra things that you pay, you've got to look at that contract tight, because this is some of the stuff that they're doing. Just think about it. You agree to do this with them. There's a piece of that contract that you missed. You didn't go to a real estate broker, you didn't go, please go to an attorney with these guys, right, to look through this stuff. And you'll find out, whoops, this cost me a lot more money, right? They can do things that a real estate agent can't. Right? If we do some of the stuff that they did, first of all, state would probably pull a license. Doesn't matter to them. Anybody can buy and sell real estate. All you got to do is have the money. So that's a quick answer.
Yeah, there's some really high integrity investors, and there are some that aren't. And, you know, it's just to be careful. You know, and the next slide we're going to talk about, like, what if a neighbor says, you know, we want to buy it, you know, and so, you know, do you have a contract or not? You
Put
know,
that up.
okay, yeah.
I think it might be all.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Yeah. So,
This is an example of how to do, in my opinion, as is. And again, it's embarrassing up here talking about us, but I know where these numbers come from. So I have to use stuff that I've actually done, stuff that's actually happened. I'm not saying that we, you know, this is just one of the things we did. The neighbor that offered 1.8 million was the neighbor next door. As soon as we got this on the MLS before we got an offer,
Yes.
right? Okay, so once it hit the MLS, then we got the independent guys going, okay, we'll give you 1.9 for it. Now, the thing that we did that was a little different is we spent money on inspections. We knew more about this house than the seller knew. So we knew it was wrong. We knew it. I mean, it was, matter of fact, when we first went into this, we were going to make a lot of changes to this, and when I started totaling those things up, I couldn't make it work. It was a lot of money. I mean, termites, structural, right? And even the seller said, well, how about if we did all that stuff? And I said, how about if you move out for 6 months and let my contractors work on it, and then we'll get it on the market, because that's what you're looking at, right? It's not, we're gonna sell it as is. So when somebody would call and say, we wanna make an offer on your property, we'd say, thanks, but before you come up with a price, wait a minute. I've got some inspection reports that you should look at. Use these inspection reports, and then you can come up with your number. So that's how that worked out. And we did get more than one offer on it, so it will work.
yeah, we got a lot of offers on that one. So that was sold completely as is, and it had a lot of work. But in disclosing that up front, when the offers were coming in, made it so later on, if they were going to ask for a request for repairs, we could say, remember, we gave this to you up front. This is what was wrong with the house, and you agreed to it. So it comes back to, again, renegotiating after the sale, but holding firm to it. And, you know, one of the things too, when you're first countering, is pointing out that first clause that Rick showed you, the as-is clause, it's in the middle of the contract. But in the counteroffer, if you have an agent that you want to have, you know, and say you want to sell it as is, in the counteroffer, we say, see item, you know, on this page that says as is. Because it's amazing how many realtors do not realize in the state of California, all properties are sold as is, all of them, if you're using the California Association of Realtors contract.
And I hope they are. Because usually the bank won't lend any money unless they see that thing. It's pretty straightforward stuff. One last thing on that. Okay, so what happens when a guy comes in, you're in escrow, and all of a sudden he says, I want you to reduce the price because things are wrong with the house, right? I love that, because I just turn around and say, geez, it was nice working with you, but we're going to cancel escrow on Monday if that's okay with you, right? And I do, because a lot of times I don't even get to that, because as soon as I see that thing come across on an email, I put the cancellation instructions, which I have the seller sign ahead of time. There it is, we're done, right? A lot of times that solves that problem. Seldom do they continue to drag their feet, because you can only drag your feet so far before we can get it back out on the market immediately. We just can't go into escrow with somebody else. So all we got to do is get those guys to cancel that. So that's your solution.
Well, and most buyers, they think they should ask for money. They've heard that other people have done this. And so, it's like and their agent is saying, yeah, you can do this. Let's go ahead and try. There's no harm in trying. But just know as a seller, you can hold firm and just say, no, I'm selling as is. So this is talking about the advantages. So the first two that Rick were talking about were the iCash, or, instant buyers, or the flippers that come. So here's the advantage. There's a way to use the multiple listing and market it as is. So yes, all homes are sold as is, but in marketing it, if we put in the remarks that it's being sold as is, you're going to pull a lot of the investors. They're going to see, they have these searches of all the listings that come up. And if they see flipper, fixer, or as is, or things like that, it flags it for them to send us an offer, send any agent an offer. It's like, okay, maybe the seller's really desperate and we'll give them this price. So that's why we, as agents, we often get a lot of investors. The thing that's interesting though is, I look at Rick and I, when our first home we bought, it was a total fixer. And it was right at the top of our price point, but we were thrilled to be able to own a home and do the work that it's including. So if you're selling to an actual buyer, not a flipper, what you're doing is pulling in people who have that emotional, they want to live in this area, because of the schools. And, they'll push themselves and they'll be willing to do the work that it takes. So when you have your agent put it into the multiple listing, as is, you're going to get two types of buyers. You're going to get the investors, the flippers, or often people who are willing to put their own sweat equity and do the work. And generally, those are the ones that are going to give you a higher price. So here's a couple of homes that we've sold that were sold as is. And this first one over here, it was a really nice home. But we had to put as is because it was a probate sale. And the probate attorney said, we don't want you doing any more work. They had done some, but she said, we're not doing anything more. So that was sold as is. And it was a really nice house. And we got a good price on it. We had, because it was as is, you could see we had prices like $900 for the investors. All cash, we'll close quick. Well, guess what? With probate, there's no quick sale. Believe me. Yeah. It's a lot of work and a lot of time. So we listed the property and we got a good price for it, as is a good buyer that wanted to live in the area. Now there's a lot of other homes that are going to need some work. So the one over on the right-hand side, again, the seller said, Christy, we do not want to do anything. And I'm like, I understand, I hear what you're saying, and I do have one suggestion. So outside the back of your house, you have this beautiful view, but looking right out the window, here you have this great big tree that has grown up, and you look out the window, what do you see? That tree. And I said, I know you don't want to invest any money in the house, but if we take that tree down, you're going to really increase the value of it. And at one point they almost didn't, and their sons suggested, you know what, Mom, we'll go out there and take that tree down. And so they did. They went out, took down the tree, captured that view, and increased the value a lot. So it was still sold as is. You could see it needed a lot of work, but sometimes it's worth it to do just a little bit to enhance the value. So when you're looking at ways to sell your home, you can do a little bit of work. Sometimes people will say, you know what, we're not going to do any work, but we want it to be safe for the new buyer. When we have the inspection, the pre-inspection, which we'll go through, They might make a few changes. They might do some cosmetic things, or just a cleanup of it. Or they might decide, rather than selling it as is, let's do the work that a flipper would. And so Rick and I, what we do is we encourage the sellers to do a pre-list inspection and go through that. And it's like, okay, is it worth your time and money to do the work that a flipper would? So we would never advise anyone to do it if it's dollar for dollar. It's just not worth the time. But, oh, next slide. Okay, you take over.
This is an example of the homeowner decided that they would manage the deal. This worked out pretty good. You can see this. I mean, we had investors offering $1.2 million. The sales cost of $186,000 includes all the commissions and all of this work. It sold for 1.7. So you may look at that as a lot of work, you may not. I don't know how your feelings are about that, but I do know what a buyer's feelings are. A buyer does not want to spend that kind of money and start doing that kind of work, because the place isn't really, it's not a livable multi-million-dollar home. That stuff is not, we try to stay away from structural and things like that require really elaborate permits, only because it just takes too long. But we were able to pull that off, and the people that bought it, I couldn't figure out, because I was able to beat a couple prices in the area, and I was really interested in what caused the buyer to buy this. And the lady said it was just like buying a new house. It looked like nobody had ever lived there before, because it really removed all the stuff and started over. How about the next one?
So where it says sales cost, is that on the previous, like, $186,000, is that what they put into fixing it up? What does sales cost mean?
Okay, that's a great question. Thank you for that. That was, all of this work
Okay.
was included in that. And
That's what
and I
they
hate to
paid
bring
for
this
that
up.
work done?
I get paid for what I do when I do that. Also, it's commission.
Okay.
Part of it went to me, part of it went to the buyer's agent. The reason that is, should I do that just really quick? Does everybody understand how real estate agents get paid, how their commissions work? Right, real quick. I'm going to just use 6% to make it real simple, okay? What happens is that when we list a property, we put it in the MLS, and the agents get to see how much money we will pay them if they will bring us a buyer. Make sense? So that's how they get paid, and we get paid. So basically, they're working for us, if you want to look at it like that, right? They're bringing a buyer, saying, here's my buyer, right? We make sure that they're financially, it has the financial wherewithal to pull it off, right? And then, even before they contact us, we have to publish in the multiple listing service what we're going to pay a buyer, or what we're going to, I'm sorry, when we put in the MLS, what we're going to pay the buyer's agent. So a lot of times you'll see lower numbers. The average number is 2.5% is what buyer's agents get. And that has to be published now. What the listing agent gets isn't published. That's between the listing agent and the home seller. And so, because some people have tried this, they said, well, shoot, what does that buyer's agent do? They don't do a bunch of anything, really. You know? I'm going to tell my agent I don't want to pay him any more than 2%. Sometimes those homes don't sell. And the reason is if that's your job, right? Are you going to take a job for 20% less? Usually not, right? I mean, so nobody shows the house. Or if the seller really wants to, if the buyer really wants to see the house, the agent will show them the house, but point out why they shouldn't buy the house. Because there's one down the street that's going to pay more. So it's just the way we work as humans, right? So it's okay.
Does everyone know what the MLS, the multiple listing service is? Is there anybody that doesn't understand that? Yeah, okay, so the multiple listing service is all the realtors that are working in the area can belong to what's called the multiple listing service. And when, as a realtor, we take a listing, it goes into, it's called CRMLS now because it's California Regional. So it's this great big conglomeration of all the agents' inventory. So this is why the benefit of putting a home in the MLS, you get a better price, is the investors are just a handful of people, right? Where the MLS is exposed to all the buyers that are out there. And now you can go to Zillow or Redfin or those websites, and those websites are pulling from the multiple listing service. So it's the exposure. So that's the way to get the best amount of money you possibly can, is by getting the most eyes on your home, whether it's in person, but mostly, we've got really good pictures for the most part now in the MLS. Sometimes there's tours and things like that. So, yeah, to get the best value, you want it in the multiple listing service.
To answer your other question about what the sales costs were, that was my money. We finance these things, and we don't charge for it. But what we do is when the house sells, we get our money back. Make sense? Okay. All right, show the next one. All right.
Okay, so in order to protect yourself when you go to sell, there's going to be inspections, there's clauses in the purchase agreement, there's some different reports and some disclosures. So we're going to go through this quickly, but they're really important. So the home inspections, do you want to talk about the pre-list inspection real quickly?
Okay, yeah, when I first got into this business, the only time the inspection was done is when you were already in escrow. So how the hell did you figure out what the sales price should have been, right? And a lot of times at that time, and this is more than 10 years back, a lot of deals were falling apart in escrow because this information would show up, right? And all of a sudden now you don't have a willing buyer and seller. You just have two people that are mad at each other. I couldn't figure out why people didn't do inspections right away. That should be the first thing you do, right? I later find out that that's how they do it in Northern California. But doing those an inspection, right? An inspection is going to be less than $1,000 usually, somewhere around $500, possibly. But for that amount of information, that's cheap because you know exactly what's wrong. You can go to your own contractor and say, hey, that list of stuff that I had, what does that stuff cost, right? And then you can turn that over to your potential buyer. Because if your potential buyer doesn't have that, and they know that they've got to do a lot of work, they're going to kick that number up, right? Because they're going to say, I can't move into this house for months. And so what happens is they're asking for more money than they should be asking for. You're giving up more of your equity than you should be giving up. Sometimes the deal just falls apart because of that. The inspections that we do are usually the physical inspection. We'll do the roof inspection. Sometimes, if there's a septic system, we'll definitely do that, but we'll also do foundation and other stuff. But pretty much to stick with the first two, because I've got guys on my staff that are ex-engineers, and they already know, they built enough houses themselves, they already know what that stuff costs. And so we know the things that we can address and the things we can't address. The number we use is if I can't fix a problem and make $4 for every dollar I spend, I don't fix it. We just say to the buyer, look, this is wrong. We're not going to fix it. This is a quote we have for it. So now figure out your price.
What is pre-list?
So that's before you actually go on the market. So a lot of times what now sellers are doing is the pre-list inspection. This way, if they're selling it as is, you can give that inspection to the buyer and say, here's what we know is wrong. Don't be coming back and asking us, for any credit or anything like that. So it's not typical. It's becoming more, that we're seeing it more often, but it really has helped our sellers in negotiating and not paying for repairs because we've already let people know what that is. We have a termite company that will do the inspections for free along the coast here. in California, termites love our properties and they just eat away at it. So it's really good to have that done ahead of time. So one of the things I wanted to point out real quickly is a lot of times people confuse what an appraisal is and what an inspection is. So an inspection is looking at the qualities of your home. What is, like if there's any safety issues, any kind of issues. An appraiser is looking at what the value of your home is. However, some of the appraisers, if you accept an offer from a VA buyer, that inspector is going to make sure there's a stove. They're going to make sure the heater works. They're going to make sure everything's okay. FHA, they're looking for safety issues. So when you're accepting an offer as is and letting the buyer know you're not going to do anything, be careful of what kind of loan they're going to be getting, because this could come up where it's mandatory to have things fixed. And it's sometimes hard to have the buyer fix it because it has to be done before the close of escrow. On the inspection, so this is the clause that's actually right in the contract that says the buyer has a right to inspections. And a lot of these slides I have in the printouts there, but this is actually part of the purchase agreement contract. And this next one is what Rick loves, is about the request for repairs.
Again, I mean, I could not sleep at night when I first started in this business, because I would get an offer on my client's house, and all of a sudden that offer, most of the money is going away. For what? Right? And I had one of them was because we don't like the carpeting upstairs. $20,000 for carpeting on a condo?
And you saw what the color was when you made the offer.
Yeah, it's like, you guys knew this stuff, right? And I brought it up, and what I get, oh, that stuff doesn't matter.
But just so you know, the buyer has a right to ask. And with the request for repairs, the seller doesn't even have to respond. It actually says in the contract there, you don't have to respond. And you don't have to accept it. And you can cancel it. And you can cancel you can give the buyer what's called a notice to perform, which says either accept that we're not going to do the work or cancel the escrow. So there are ways to protect yourself. So I wanted to point out, in the actual purchase agreement, you are stating as the seller that you're going to disclose everything you know about the property. Everything you know about the property. So say that you think, oh, well, my roof leaked years ago, it's not a problem now, and then you sell it and the buyer's talking to the neighbor and they said, yeah, it's leaking in this area. Oh, the seller didn't tell you they had problems with that years ago? Well, the seller thought they had fixed it, but they didn't. So anything that you know or repairs you have done should be disclosed. And so we're going to go through some of the disclosures quickly. The real estate transfer disclosure statement actually tells the buyer the items that you have in the house and whether they work or not. If they don't, then you're going to disclose that. Then there's a seller's property questionnaire, which is a 4-page and it's got lots of questions about your property. So here's some interesting ones. This, by law, when you sell a property, it needs to have the water heater strapped. Even if you sell it as is, the water heater has to be strapped. You have to have working smoke detectors. You have to have working carbon monoxide detectors. And if your home was built before 1978, you need to disclose if you know if it has lead paint. I have to say I've sold lots of homes that were older than 1978, and none of my sellers knew if there was lead paint. So you only do it if it's been tested and you know there was lead paint.
What about asbestos?
So if you know there's asbestos, then and it's been tested, then yes. Yeah, if you don't, you can't disclose what you don't know. So there's a lot of reports that are really important that are going to be given to the buyer. If you're in a homeowners association, the seller will be paying the property manager to give the CCNRs, the budget, and information. And you want to do that quickly because the buyer can cancel if there's something in those HOA documents that they don't like. So you want to get those to them real quick. The title report is done. It's something that the seller normally pays for, and it's showing it, if there's any liens against the property. It also shows where the easements are. Like if the buyer wants to put a pool through the backyard, in the backyard, but there's electrical, underneath, it's going to show, where the easements are. And then the one to the left is the natural hazard zone disclosure, and this is huge now living in San Diego. The natural hazard zone disclosure tells us if it's in a flood zone, if it's in a fire zone, if it's in an earthquake zone. The seller pays for this. It's about $100, and is required for the seller to let the buyer know if it's in these zones. So I wanted to spend just a couple minutes because this has really become in the past you brought up asbestos. So when I first was in the business back in '86, asbestos was the big deal. Everyone wanted the Selig's test, it's like wanted to make sure there's no asbestos. Then the big deal became mold. Right now, it's fire hardening. I've had lots of calls recently of people's fire insurance that's being canceled, their homeowners insurance. So I have a broker that I know that can help people in case you know somebody that's in that position. But the fire hardening, what it is when we do that natural hazard zone disclosure, if it's in a very high wildfire area, you need to have an inspection done on the property. A lot of sellers are doing this inspection before it even goes on the market to make sure that the property is safe. That means the fire department, they actually have a division now, they come out and inspect the home. So you need to have that natural hazard zone disclosure report to know if you're in the very high fire zone. And so this is going to become more and more important as there are lots of, I just had a buyer that wanted to buy up in Carmel Valley, and that was one of the things. They're right on the edge of that wildfire zone. And the fact that she's going VA, and there were some other issues, we decided I have to make an offer on it. But this is something that I just wanted everyone to be aware of. I put information in your package about this because it is really important. This is actually an inspection that was done on a property where the fire department came out and did the inspection. So the sooner you do that, this came up on a buyer that I was representing, and we didn't get that natural hazard zone disclosure till 3 weeks into the escrow. It was in the very high fire zone. We had an inspection done. There's a lot of work. The buyer ended up canceling. So I want you to know these are things that when you go to sell, be proactive. Get your reports done, get your inspections done so that you're not 3 weeks into a transaction when this type of information gets put out. Just recently, on the right-hand side, and this is in your pamphlet, the red area, if you click on the map that I gave you guys the link to, it gives you the whole U.S., and it shows the red area is the people that are in very high-risk areas, and that would be us. We are in the high fire zone, we're in a high flood zone. It's like they have us as a very high risk area. So just be careful. Get those natural hazard zone disclosures done quickly if you're going to sell a property. So we're going to go into Q&As now. So Chris, would you bring that, take a microphone. Chris and Karen are going to come around. You guys, when they give you the microphone, put it up close so everyone in the room can hear what your question is. And is there anybody that has any questions that we didn't answer? Karen, over here.
How does fencing figure into the property
Wait, so
value?
say that again?
How does fencing figure into the property value? Fencing.
Fencing in a property value, it depends on the buyer, right? Is that important to them? It may not be. They may not care one way or the other, right? So it just can't be answered because I don't know who the buyer is.
Oh.
Okay, but
It's just that like in the developments around here, like sometimes you're sharing it with 3 different families and some you
Right.
know, want to go in on you, with you, and others don't, and it's super expensive.
You remember that house I showed you with the driveway that went all the way?
Yeah.
It's the same thing, right? A lot of times if they're called flag lots, where there's a driveway to get into those homes, right? Well, that driveway needs replaced, and the people that own those homes, right, are the ones that have to pay for it. Well, there's going to be somebody in that area that doesn't want to pay for it, right? And so the other homeowners are going to have to figure it out. So that's just a quick answer. You had a quick one.
Well, I'm assuming that you suggest that we have a pre-inspection and pay for it, right? Now, the buyer doesn't have to accept your pre-inspection report. He can have his own inspector, and he pays for that. That's up to him. Okay? The other thing, what do you do if you have a yearly contract on termites, and they'll sign off on that? Do you,
So what you can do is have, before you put it on the market, have your termite company come out and do an escrow report on the property. So that that's their inspection to say, because often you have those yearly contracts, and even though you have those, sometimes there's still issues that come up that people have found. So, go ahead and have that inspection so that you have that ahead of time and find out.
thank you.
That's called, what you're looking for is basically a termite clearance.
Right.
That this has been handled, right? That's very important to the state. If that termite, a lot of times you're gonna get a guy come out and say, oh yeah, we handled that. Great, can I have the termite clearance? Oh, you don't need that. Yeah, well, my insurance company says that I need it, and the people that own the loan on this place says I want it. Give me my termite clearance.
So the termite clearance too, it used to be required by lenders to have the termite clearance. It's no longer required. But if it's in the purchase agreement, if the buyer comes in and gives you a purchase agreement that says they want to have a termite clearance, the lender is going to insist on them having a termite clearance because it's part of the contract.
If they're gonna get a loan, the bank always wants it, right?
But they don't always want it if it's not,
Really?
yeah, if it's not in the purchase agreement. So it used to be actually a clause in the purchase agreement. And if anybody wants a copy of the purchase agreement, we can give you a blank one. But the agent or the buyer, they have to actually write in there now. It's no longer a standard part of the agreement.
And look out, because this is another one that can bite you in the fanny during escrow, right? Somebody goes, hey, what about termite? We didn't pay attention to that.
And it can be quite expensive. Yes?
So it sounds as if there are lots of inspections. How many are there?
So one of the things we suggest for the beginning is to have, for your pre-inspections, to do a physical inspection, to do a termite inspection, and to do a roof inspection. Now, the general physical inspection may call out some items. They may see something and call it out. Also, if you're in an area where you have septic, you may want to have the septic inspection done ahead of time. We've had septic tanks that are cracked or issues. So it's like those are the things, and if you're selling it as is, it doesn't mean you have to fix it. But if you disclose it up front to the buyer before they write that offer or before the price is negotiated, you could say, we know this is wrong and we are not fixing it.
Yeah, hi. I guess this question is about value for money, about improvement, pre-sale improvements. I live on a cul-de-sac, and two of the houses in the last 5 years have sold. Both houses were done up, $100,000 worth of improvements made prior to the sale. The purchaser came in, took it all out, absolutely took it all out. So, what to do? It's like, is it worth it or not? It just breaks my heart to see all that new construction because we just don't like the color or whatever.
When I'm going through the inspection report, I'm trying to figure out two things. What in here do I have to do to get this high number, right? And what here can I let pass? Then I bring in my personal inspector, who is an interior designer. You go, okay, what stuff are we ripping out of here, what stuff are we putting back in, right? And I put it on a long spreadsheet, and I'm looking at, say, what the highest, it depends on what kind of a market we're in. Market now, right? If I'm gonna do that, I'm gonna take the last highest sales price, and that's the sales price that I'm shooting for, right? But I gotta put some money into this. And I do not want, the numbers that I try to use is for every dollar that I put into the deal, I get 4 back. If I can't see that, right? And remember, I'm just doing an estimate now, and so these things can change, but I've been pretty lucky. I'll just say I'm lucky. I like being lucky. So, but they usually come out to be about $4 that you get back for every dollar you spend. And one of the things that I have to fight a lot of times, and I had to on one of these, was the seller wanted things done to the house that she had not done in the past 30 years. And she thought that was important. 2 of them violated code. But I knew it was better to go ahead and do them and then clean it up in escrow, right? Because we're all pretty much attached to the place we live, right? And the last thing we want to hear is some yahoo saying, no, you don't have to do that. Don't do that, right? It doesn't keep the relationship tight enough. So,
Yeah, but we are very honest
oh, yeah.
about.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell them
you know,
usually twice. I'll say, look, well, I want it done anyhow, right? Well, it's her house. She can do anything she wants, the way I look at it, right? So we try to talk everybody into the place where they should be, selling their house, getting the most money, as opposed to making the house look like what they think it should look like. Right?
One of the things too in fixing up a home like that, in today's market, we often have multiple offers. And buying a home is very emotional. And if somebody walks in and they just have to have it, you know, it's move-in condition, they're gonna give a price. They may not be the person that actually sells it, but they're setting prices higher, which then brings up other buyers to bring in a higher price. But if you're marketing not to an investor, buying a home is a very emotional thing. And so having your home look good has that emotion, and it will trigger people that they have to have that home.
Yeah, I just had a question that I'm making logical question. If you're leaving things at the home that are not attached, anything that's attached to the home is supposed to go with the house, right? But if you leave something that is technically not attached and it may not be working properly, do you have to disclose that?
If it's something that, say that a personal property is a refrigerator, and say that the buyer puts the refrigerator in the agreement, the purchase agreement, you would probably want to say, you know, we've included the refrigerator, we're not making warranties or guarantees, we've had this issue with it. You know, it's you want to be honest about it. You don't want, yeah. So, and you're right, it's like personal property, one of the things you want to make sure, if you have like big pots at the house that are not in the ground, make sure that you're including those in the purchase agreement if you are not choosing to take them and you don't want to figure out how to get rid of them. So we have had sellers where the buyer really didn't want the washer and dryer. You know, the buyer's like, we'll get our own. The seller's like, I don't want to deal with it. So the washer and dryer are included. You know, our sellers don't want to be getting rid of that. So, you know, it's now on the buyer's back to figure out what to do with that washer and dryer.
This is just the general, what is the difference between a real estate agent, a realtor, and a broker?
Brokers are taller.
Good question.
So a real estate agent is anyone that's choosing to sell property. The difference between a real estate agent and a realtor is they are bound by a set of code of ethics, things that we need to make sure and honor and take care of our clients. The difference between that and a broker is a broker, there's real estate agent license and then there's broker's license. And so a broker, Rick is called a broker associate. So he has a broker's license, but we don't have our own company. We're with Compass. So the broker is Compass. And then, so that's why he's called a broker associate as opposed to just a plain broker. Does that make sense?
The way the brokers look at it is during a lawsuit, they'll take us apart. We're supposed to know the law better than a real estate agent, but you know,
There's a lot more education than
Yeah.
a broker has to go through than a realtor or real estate
right,
agent.
but yeah, I wanted to add, one of the things that you brought up that I did not address is, you do all this work to the house, and the new owners come in and they rip everything out. Why did you do that? And that's a great question, it really is. The reason that I recommend that you do that is, one, you don't know who is going to be coming in there. But two, they're going to walk into a house, in some of these cases, that looks like they've been completely remodeled, look brand new. The people just don't like the decorations that my person used. She only picks the decorations to access the largest market possible. That's what's going through her mind, right? And I'm okay with that, because as long as there's somebody out there that would buy into that. But you're correct. I mean, I just sold one not too long
It
ago.
happens a lot.
They gut it, you know, and I couldn't believe it. I was like, that took a lot of work. But usually the work that they'll do is, you know, painting, floor covering, things along those lines. So when we get something ready to sell, everything's white, floor covering is as standard as we can get, and they're usually the first things to go. Yes?
So this law, AB 38, looks like it was established in 2021. Is that mandatory now with all sales, or does the buyer have to pay for that?
What was that?
Which disclosure is that on?
Well, you have it on the home fire hardening inspection.
Oh,
It says
okay.
earlier in 2021, the AB 38 law was established.
Yeah,
So
so-
now is that mandatory with each home sale, or is it optional, and does the buyer have to pay for that inspection?
So it is negotiable. So there's an actual contract that I'm willing to share with anybody. This is actually called a disclosure, but I would give it up front and use it in when you're putting your offer together, because in it, it states who takes care of that, who does the work. So there's actually an area in here that says the buyer will be responsible for taking care of this within a year of the sale. So it's still mandatory to be done. It doesn't have to fall on the seller's back, but I would, again, you know, Rick and I are all about being proactive, so it'd be good to do the inspection ahead of time. Know if there's an issue. If there's no issue, yeah, we're fine handling that. We've already got the inspection. But if there's an inspection and it's very costly, I'm not sure if you want to take that on, because the buyer may be changing the landscaping. You know, one of the things I was at an inspection for the fire hardening. The person from the fire department that was going around said they're actually trying to create a law where around your house you have cement or decomposed granite or something like that, where you don't have vegetation right next to the house. It's not a law yet, but I would not be surprised to see that coming because of all the fire issues that we're having.
I actually have an additional question. So are HOAs now compliant with that law? Because we have an HOA, and between the houses, they planted like trees 23 years ago, and now I'm thinking they're not 100 feet away from the houses. And we've had fires in Carlsbad where I live.
Yeah, so that's a very good question. I don't have a specific answer for it yet, but I'm sure it will be coming. Like right now, the HOAs, all the decks have to be inspected. You know, if you have a condo and it has a deck, it's required, I forget the time, you know, that they need to do that, but they're requiring, it's mandatory that all homeowners associations that have decks have them inspected for safety. So, you know, and that's something that you know, it's a really good question.
Yeah.
It's a really good question.
Say you live in an HOA and you have decks and nobody's inspecting those decks, and somebody slips on that deck, who doesn't even live there, right? Not only is that homeowner going to get on the list but so's the HOA, right? This is where the lawsuits all go. And, you know, I
And
said
it's
it
more
before, and
than-
I'll say it again. Attorneys love San Diego. They love it.
Yes, go ahead, sir.
Yes, can you amplify a little more on the termite inspection? Because you can have an inspection, but you can have a swarm of termites and immediately be infested again. And, you know, how long does that hold, I mean, for that kind of inspection? If you're doing it
What the company does, what the company should be doing is when they do that inspection, they're going to notice places where there's termite infestation. And maybe it's just one or two places with a couple little holes, you know, and they can use the orange stuff for that, right? Or maybe there's just a little hole here, but that little hole goes down that thing that's holding up the roof, right? That's bad news, right? And that's what these guys are really good at. And so they come back with their report, and they say, hey, look, this place has a high infestation of termites. That beam needs replaced. That outside material there needs replaced. This needs replaced. And not only that, but you're going to have to tent it because we can't micro take care of the termites. We got to take care of this one big problem. So the tent comes off, right? These guys send a notice to Sacramento that basically says, okay, this house is termite free, right? It's termite free as of the date that they mail that thing out. After that, there's more termites.
Most of those
More
companies
termites.
will give a year insurance, you know, it's like that. If they find termites in that year or somebody does, they'll come out and treat it.
And then if you were selling and going into escrow, do you still have to do a tenning then? Or is that report, if it's still valid, is that covered in escrow?
So you want to have a really good termite company that you trust do the work and that will insure it. Because we have had cases where we had a termite inspection and a clearance, and another termite company found an issue, and they just came out and treated it. You know, it's like you want a company that is good enough to do that. Because if there are termites, you know, you're right. Termites love it here. You treat it, you tent it, and next week, you know, a swarm comes in. So, I mean, you can't beat it. Termites love it here as much as we do.
As much as the attorneys do. That's it.
Okay, one more question, and then we're gonna.
Well, let's do two.
Yeah. Oh, okay, two more questions.
It's another one on this same topic. Is it better to get a termite company that will tell you what's wrong, and, you know, like if you have woodwork that needs to be replaced, then you hire someone else to do it, as opposed to a company that says, oh, we'll diagnose it and repair it?
So the thing, if you hire somebody outside of that, they're not going to insure that part. So the
Okay.
termite company, when they give a clearance, will insure the work that they did. They
Okay.
will not insure the work that somebody else did.
So it's probably better that way. I just didn't know if companies, you know, like found things that needed repaired in order to make money. You
Well,
know,
and that's what, you want a really honest company.
How do you know?
Well, we've seen some good and bad ones, and
Oh,
it's
okay.
like, yeah,
I'll get them on the way out.
The one that we've used has a really high integrity, and so he's also too, if he misses something, takes care of it. You know, he's really, you know, you want a good company, and there are all different types of companies out there.
Somebody told me to make sure that we have a real estate attorney. What is the purpose of that?
Real estate attorneys are good to have when you need them. Not in California, but in other parts of this country, there are no real estate brokers. There's no escrow. It's all done by attorneys. Those are the guys that do it. So they have what they call, I haven't been to one, I know, this is all hearsay. They have what they call their closing date? No, they call it their closings are, everybody comes and
To the
sits around
table.
a table.
The attorney sits there, the buyers and sellers, so it depends.
And that's how they finish the stuff off. And that will never work in California because we have too many contracts to start with. I mean,
Yeah, well-
every contract that you see, and if and when you go to sell your home, you will not believe the amount of contracts you're going to sign. You're not going to believe it. But every one of those contracts is based on court cases. So it's
I
not
would
something
never-
somebody made up.
I would never tell you not to hire an attorney. You know, if it's important to you, yes, do it. The California Association of Realtors, all the contracts are written by attorneys. And every single year, we go to classes with the revisions on those contracts and the new forms. And every time there is some kind of lawsuit, there's a new clause that goes into our contracts. When I started in '86, I think the contract had 2 pages and the 4 pages for the contract and 2 pages for the disclosure. Karen was the escrow officer. I haven't looked at it. So it's very simple. Our stack has grown on those contracts because new clauses keep getting added by the California Association Realtors. Their attorneys are constantly revising and doing it to protect both the buyers and the sellers and us, you know, so that we can protect you, or, you know, the homeowner. So, yes.
I just make one statement. Everything that you've heard today, whether you're a buyer or seller, trust me, will help you get through escrow so much easier. Take this advice, having sat on the other side of the desk for the escrow, it really will help facilitate not only the speed, but your concept and your emotions. And then again, it's an emotional thing. It's what it is, whether you're selling or buying. So, well done. Thank you.
Thanks, Karen. Before I let you go, I wanted to remind you to please fill out the feedback form for us. You can leave it on the desk or hand it. And then I wanted to point out our future topics that are coming up. Next month, it's going to be about your aging brain. We're going to be talking about what happens to our brain as it ages and what we can do to help our brain and protect it. In November, we're doing Forever Home Concept, which is aging in place. You know, what are you going to do to make your home safe? If you're planning on living there the rest of your life, now's the time to make it safe. Don't wait till you're hurt and you need bars in the shower, or you need to take out the tub and put in a shower. Also, we're going to talk about in-home care. You know, it's like people that come in and help you if you are choosing to age in place. So those are going to be hit on. And then in December, we're going to talk about living, dying, and leaving a legacy on your terms. So on the feedback form, if you'd like to sign up for a future seminar, you can do it there, or you could go on our website. And I think we just have a couple more minutes if anybody has a last minute question. Otherwise, thank you for coming.
We're done. Thank you, guys.